watu wameshikilia maovu zaidi kuliko mema. Na mtu anapoonekana anatenda mema, basi huonekana ni mtu ambao kwamba ameshapitwa na wakati.
Every week on Big Minds, it's a new show just for you.
Waweza fanya nini kwa dakika 4?
Na mega dola.
Unaweza piga chef.
Na mega dola. Kila kitu ni mega.
Waweza pika ugali.
Na mega dola. Pesa hapa ni mega. Na mega dola.
Labda waweza fua nguo.
Na mega dola.
Ama unaweza tengeneza milioni 30. 4 minutes are enough to win big with Mega Dollar. Just go to Lipa na M-Pesa, select Pay Bill, enter business number 295888, enter account name KBC, deposit 10 shillings or more, enter your PIN and press OK, then choose 10 numbers from 1 to 80 and send to 29588. And you can win up to 30 million shillings every 4 minutes. Deposit, play and win with Mega Dollar. The big game for big winners.
Vote for KBC Channel 1 as your favorite TV station for the Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2018. SMS the word Kuza to 15601. It's absolutely free. Voting ends on 9th May. Vote, vote, vote.
Well, a good evening to you. Great thanks for joining us. This is Channel 1 NewsHour. Now, tonight the government has announced an increment of salary for workers, a 5%. Is it a far cry? Well, the opinion is divided.
Well, there are those who feel that the government should have focused more on bringing the cost of living down as opposed to the increment. But that, of course, will be forming the basis of our interactive segment tonight. And we're seeking to find out from you, what is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? What is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? The SMS line now officially open, 22162. Let us know who you are and where you're texting us from. Leave us a brief comment on Twitter at KBC Channel 1, my Twitter handle at Katwa Chenga, and of course for John at J Curia.
Absolutely. Our conversation with you begins right about now. Our SMS line 22162. And of course you can tell us who you are and where you're watching us from. On Twitter at KBC Channel 1 at J Curia. Get to your phone. Let's get talking. But first things first, here are the highlights.
I hereby at this stage declare a corresponding increase of 5% increase of the minimum wage with immediate effect.
Government announces a paltry 5% increase to the minimum wage.
Relief aid distribution launched in Mandera County following heavy rains.
And learning from experts. A
a preview of the Cuba healthcare system rated among the best in the world.
Welcome back. Channel 1 News Hour begins right now with me, Catherine Achenga.
And my name is John Jacob Kere. Like you just saw, there are lessons to learn from Cuba. And let's just say I'm getting fresh again on this bulletin.
Oh yeah, you were in Cuba.
Yes, I've been in Cuba for the last 1 week. But then again, of course, today is to try and share the experience, the Cuban experience, particularly in healthcare, with our viewers. Be sure to catch up with that piece. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Susan Thuku. A warm welcome to you.
Let's begin with the Labor Day celebrations, given that today the workers had their day, and the government has announced a paltry 5% increase to the minimum wage bill.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says the increase has been occasioned by inflation coupled with other factors, such as the rising cost of living.
Now, the increment has, however, been met with dissatisfaction from various stakeholders who argue that the government ought to have focused on reducing the cost of living.
After pocketing an 18% increase to the minimum wage in 2017, Kenyans held high hopes of an even bigger percentage this year. In keeping up with what has become a norm, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced a paltry 5% increase to the minimum wage.
So what we are doing is that we are now just matching with the rate of inflation as it today. The current rate of inflation is 4.8%, but the president has been generous enough and he has given 5% so that to cushion them against this. This, of course, going to be, the employers are not happy about it because it's going to erode their profit.
The news was contained in his Labor Day speech delivered by Labour and Social Protection Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani. But even as a section of Kenyans welcome the raise, many still feel that the raise is a drop in the ocean.
I think that is too low, considering the inflation in this country, considering that, you know, the larger workforce is about the small people.
We are grateful that they considered to give something, you know.
Usikatae mkate nusu na una mkate mzima. Yes, kwa hivyo tunaikubali hiyo nyongeza. Chakata
2017 angalau wafanyikazi walikuwa wanapata kitu mzuri, lakini raundi hii tukuambiwa tumeongezewa 5%, naona kwa ajili itakuwa ngumu sana.
The minimum wage in Kenya for cleaners, gardeners and house servants is set at 13,572 shillings in Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu, which means it will go up to 12,600 shillings. Cooks, waiters, miners in Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu is 13,960 shillings and will increase to 14,658 shillings. Night watchmen in Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu 14,420 shillings and will go up to 15,141 shillings.
In terms of the general overhead, things are slowly getting better. That's why we are matching. The president has decided to match the current rate of inflation with a better pay so that, you know, the workers can be cushioned against.
Over the last 1 year, the labor sector has been rocked by recurrent strikes, with the government now calling for dialogue to help resolve outstanding issues.
We encourage unions to act as a social partners, reasoning together in addressing issues of common concern to the country.
The 2018 Labor Day celebrations were marked amid reports that the economy was on an upward trajectory despite unemployment being a major challenge. For Channel 1 News, I am Edward Kabasa.
Well, the opposition leaders Raila Odinga has now called for an end to the boycotts of some products that had been singled out by the opposition after the emotive August 8, 2017 general election. Raila said the boycott pushed by NASA's National Resistance Movement has been overtaken by events after his Harambee House handshake with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Raila spoke at Uhuru Park when he joined the country's labor movement in commemorating the May Day, an event that was dominated by politics.
The famous Harambee House handshake politics between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga found its way in this year's Labor Days celebrations.
That when you are with Raila Odinga, you don't need any support in Kenya. Because of what? he has suicidal supporters from Nyanza and across the country. Suicidal.
Ningependa kusema tunaunga mkono the handshake kati ya Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga na Uhuru Kenyatta.
NASA leader Raila Odinga, who attended the event, defending the peace deal with President Uhuru Kenyatta, saying it was the only way out for the country to enjoy peace and tranquility. The NASA leader subsequently announced a lift on the product boycott by his supporters from Safaricom, Brookside, Hako and Birico companies, which the opposition had accused of working with Jubilee prior to last year's election.
Tunawasamehe Safaricom, Birico, Brookside na Hako. Sawa sawa. Tunakubaliana ya kwamba sasa watu wetu wanaweza kufanya biashara na makampuni haya.
The opposition leader said NASA would support the government on its 4-pillar agenda for development.
And that's the reason why we in NASA are in agreement with Jubilee in trying to address the issue of job creation, the issue of housing, the issue of universal health care, and the issues of food security.
The composition of the Committee of Advisors to bring to fruition the Harambee Peace Pact also was a subject of concern from leaders attending the celebrations.
Muliunda kamati na tulifurahi, lakini kwa hiyo kamati vijana wako wapi? Sisi tunaunga mkono na ningeli ya pili hata ile Committee Advisory Board ile ambayo mumechagua sisi tu support.
But the Nairobi politics could not escape the event, with Governor Mike Sonko telling of his detractors for trying to undermine his authority.
Nairobi si ya Sonko peke yake. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba watu wote, hii lawama ndogo ndogo ya watu kila saa Sonko ameshindwa na kazi, tuachane na hii siasa ya kishetani.
It's a Labor Day that comes at a time when the country is enjoying a relative peace politically. And so, where the speech is here, Samson Kitavi reporting for Channel 1 News at Uhuru Park in Nairobi County.
And now the Labor Day celebrations this year were marked with renewed hope as thousands of Kenyan workers braved the rains to display their tools of trade at Uhuru Park grounds. It was an event that was characterized by calls for unity and development, a contrast from last year's event that was rather majorly used as a campaign forum. Roncliffe Odit gives the details of the optimism at the celebrations amid tight police security.
Tuesday morning at Uhuru Park grounds, the cloudy weather with slight showers could not deter the Kenyan worker from marking this year's Labor Day. Security was beefed up with police officers patrolling the grounds to avert any criminal acts. Those entering the park were subjected to security checks, while vendors used the opportunity to make an extra coin. The arrival of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga attracting applause. As is the norm, the workers marched past the podium, displaying their expertise in contributing to the country's economy. Once this was done, it was time for some entertainment. Guests put their best foot forward as they enjoyed music by Congolese rumba maestro Nibo. His skills are making the fans demand for more. As the curtains came down on the event, the workers continued to agitate for better pay with calls for the government to lower the cost of living. Reporting for Channel 1 NewsHour, I'm Ron Cliff. OD.
Of course, celebrating a renewed hope, this coming, of course, at a time when the government has increased the wage bill by 5%. And that is what is forming the basis of our opinion poll question tonight, where we are asking you, what is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? What is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? 22162 is the SMS line. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to let us know who you are and where you're texting us from. On Twitter at KBC Channel 1, my Twitter handle at Kato Acheng, and of course for John at J Curia. Give us your feedback. We will be sampling them as we go along here on Channel 1 NewsHour. And still on matters that touch on Labor Day, a section of casual workers are terming the 5% increment in the minimum wage bill as so insignificant in the current economic situation. The workers say the cost of living is almost beyond their reach and the increment is just a slap in their faces.
Kenyans countrywide eagerly followed Labor Day celebrations on various media platforms, eager to hear the day's announcement that inevitably affects their welfare. Godfrey, a security officer at a local farm in Mombasa County, was one such individual who was not amused after the government announced the 5% increment in minimum wage.
Mara nyingi tunaona wafanyakazi wa serikali wanapata kitu ambao kimeahidiwa na rais kama ameongeza mshahara certain percentage, lakini wafanyikazi ambao wameajiriwa na private sectors bado hawana kitu. Kwa sababu gani? Employers wengi wanapuuza, wanaweka labor officials kwa mfuko.
Godfrey tabulates his budget, which is beyond what he takes home from his workplace, saying the national labor debate should now revolve around the cost of living and not the customary meager increment every year.
Kulingana na maisha sasa hivi tunaishi, kodi ziko juu. Kodi ya chini sasa hivi, mtu wa chini sasa hivi, kodi shilingi 3,500. Ile riski tunapewa pia itoshi. Maisha yako juu, kodi iko juu. Wakenya wengi tunavumilia. Kwa hivyo hatujivuni kwamba Labor Day ndio ni siku ya wafanyakazi, lakini sisi kama Kenya tujaona umuhimu wake.
His predicaments mirroring those of Charles from Kisumu County, who is in his advanced years and wants the government to seek long-term measures to reward low-income earners.
Labor Day is beautiful, lakini si beautiful sababu vile watu wanataka. Kwa nini siku hizi watu nagoma? Everybody nagoma. Kitu gani inaenda mbaya? Na kwa nini government hawezi kufind out? Kwa nini watu nagoma kila saa?
Rose Kuku for Channel 1 NewsHour.
And now the Kenya National Union of Teachers NUT Secretary General Wilson Session has rubbished claims of purported ouster by the Union National Executive Council. Session says he still remains at the helm of a union, terming the vote that led to the suspension by the National Executive Council as inconsequential. And as George Kiduka now reports, KOTU Secretary General Francis Atuli has come out to defend the embattled NUT boss.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
Leadership row at the giant teachers union NUT continue brewing after Soshon maintained that he will not vacate office after he was allegedly ousted by a group of NEC members.
I am the Secretary General of Kenya National Union of Teachers, duly elected by the teachers of Kenya. And I want to state that we have fundamental issues with the Teacher Service Commission.
Sosion, who has since been deregistered by the teachers' employer TSC, following his nomination as MP, maintains the annual delegates conference held in Mombasa and attended by more than 2,000 delegates, resolved that he continues at the helm of the union.
Tutaendelea kupigania haki yetu bila kutishwa na yeyote.
KOTU Secretary General Francis Atuli, however, says Sosion will serve his term at the NUT office to last day, accusing a few individuals of being used by politicians who want to take over the union.
Walimu simu wanatumiwa na wanasiasa, na mimi namwambia nyinyi mna bahati to get somebody to be in parliament to articulate your issues and issues related to workers. So Sioni will stand with you. Kama hawaelewi, we will make them to understand.
Sosion has been facing turbulence in the union since he was nominated to parliament.
Every 4 minutes is a chance for you to win big with Mega Dollar. Just go to Lipa na M-Pesa, enter paybill number 295888, account name KBC, and amount from 10 shillings or more. Then select your 10 numbers from 1 to 80 and send to 29588. You can win up to 30 million shillings. Start playing now and win. Mega Dollar. Big winners every 4 minutes.
Big Minds, it's a new show just for you.
Vote for KBC Channel 1 as your favorite TV station for the Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2018. SMS the word Kuza to 15601. It's absolutely free. Voting ends on 9th May. Vote, vote, vote.
Welcome back. You're watching Channel 1 News. But of course, a reminder of our big question tonight, stemming from the events happening today and the increment of 5% to workers. We're asking, a big question. What is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? What is your take on the 5% increment on the minimum wage? 22163 is our SMS line. It appears on your screen, as well as on Twitter at KBC Channel 1, at J. Curia, and also at Kato Achenga. And well, I'm joined by Charles Omanga, the Chief Legal Officer at KOTU, and of course dressed in purple, the color of today, or you would say the color that workers were donning today. And he's the better person to tell us about this increment. 5%. Is KOTU satisfied with this increment by the President?
Okay, well, thank you very much, my brother. What I would want to say and to state is that we as KOTU, we welcome what the President has offered us. And the only reason why we are accepting is because we had requested for at least 18%. And one thing that we must also remind ourselves that the country has just come from 2 elections. That one, the August 8th and the October 26th. That actually generated a lot of discontent and really interfered with the economic processes. Remember that we lost close to 100,000 jobs. And that one was occasioned by the fact that so many industries decided to close. Because remember, when a country have a lot of prolonged period of political instability, it is not very conducive for them to at least continue. So in that effect, they decided to close, and the net effect of that is that quite a number of people lost jobs. Therefore, we have a very functional department of economic research that before we request for any salary increment, we also have to base our facts on research, and actually that is why this time we settled on 18%. Remember the other years we had advocated for 40%, where the other year the President offered as 18%. But because we also must understand, we also live in Kenya, and this economy is ours and the country is ours, we also must live with the realities of life. So in as much as we cannot say that we are very much satisfied by the 5%, because we had really hoped that the president would give workers 18%, but 5% is better than nothing. Remember the previous year we were not given anything, and we are not in an electioneering period. Which of course
brings me to the other question, because you've talked about this 5%, but in 2017 the president gave workers 18%. But then there are concerns about the slow implementation by employers on this 18%, leave alone what has been offered this time, 5%, and even the 18% offered last year has not been implemented by some employers.
This has been a question, and we had really, we've really pressurized and lobbied, and we are really, we have requested, and if you, as you've seen today, our very able Secretary General, Honorable Francis Atwoli, really pleaded with the Cabinet Secretary and indeed the Presidency that we've been giving workers 18% and various salary increments. But the question is the implementation process. The implementation process has never been something that is we could smile about. And that still remains a concern. And we do believe and hope that this time round, with the 5% plus the 18% that has never been fully implemented, together with the employers, we will continue to engage and dialogue and to consult widely to ensure that whenever workers are given, even if it is 1%, let that 1% be implemented. And you know, we are social partners. We value much tripartism, where the government, the employers, and the worker representatives sit on the table. So we will continue to engage them. We will continue to engage the government to ensure that whenever something is offered, and it is not only to the effect of salary increment. We have so many legislations that are not fully operational, they are not fully implemented. So this still remains a big challenge. And we would still plead and request the government so that the government can walk the talk. The issue of just making pronouncement that we've given 18% like the one that we've offered the previous year, and you realize that this has never been fully implemented, still remains.
I want to dwell
a
little bit on that one and keep your answer short, because obviously there are other issues we have to deal with. But in the event that an employer does not, implement the 18% pay increase or the 5% offered by government right now, what mechanisms exist under KOTU as the umbrella workers body, to ensure that an employer is able or an employer is compelled to implement this increment?
Compliance is something that is not optional. Because remember, before an offer is given, it means that even the employers are satisfied that it is something that is physically attainable. So there would never be any reason whatsoever that an employer or indeed the government can now choose that after giving employers, workers an offer, then they renege and now try to again not to ensure that they implement. So what we will do, and we have so much options available for us as workers on the table. One, we really believe in dialogue. We have a very enormous industrial relation practice machinery that if we indeed constructively engage, we would be able to ensure that these things are implemented without any industrial unrest, issues of strikes. We can sit, we can have boardroom, we can consult, then we ensure that at least let workers get what is due to them.
All right. Let's talk about these controversial amendments that are the Cabinet Secretary for Labour is being accused of introducing, particularly to the NSSF Act, but also the fact that there's this clause that wants to bar public service workers who provide essential services from participating in a strike. That even as the strike goes on, those offering essential services can still go to work. And KOTU is really opposing that. Why are you opposing it?
We are opposing this because, remember, the adjective essential services is too colonial. And it
what do you mean too colonial?
The reason why I say the adjective essential services too colonial is because These were the terms that were used and coached by the white settlers and our colonial masters to ensure that the Africans that are in tea farms and in white places of work are now denied an opportunity to ensure that they can get their leave, they can at least engage their employer in terms of improving their working condition, their working environment, their remuneration. So the reason why I would qualify the term essential service as colonial is because whatever services any employee or any worker is rendering, irrespective of whichever sector that you are coming from, whether you're in public service or in private life, it means that the service that a worker is offering is indeed essential. If at all there is some services that would never be essential, then there would never be a worker in the first place. You can do them yourself.
Let me ask you, for example, would you compare a doctor with somebody, I would say, plucking flowers in Naivasha?
Of course, yes. Let me tell you why. A tea plucker is providing essential service, because remember, tea, there is a time that if it is not plucked, that it is wasted.
But
it is overgrown. No, it overgrows and it is wasted. It is and tea is a cash crop of this country. A person working in a flower farm, we also remember that flowers are perishable. If indeed they don't do that within the stipulated time, then there is a loss of revenue. Going back to doctor's question, remember that when doctors takes an oath, that we swear to protect the lives of Kenyans. And indeed, even lawyers and advocates as myself, we take an oath. But this oath should not be used to deny, because the moment we demand services from any worker of this great nation, we must also be concerned about their welfare. The welfare is not only confined to salaries. The welfare concerns the equipment, the tools of trade, the theater hall, the good MRI machines, and the working conditions. And whenever we want now to say that now doctors should just continue working even with an empty stomach, we are lying to ourselves. Therefore, when you are now want to talk about essential service and looking at it in terms of doctors offering a service, then that is something that it is something that we cannot even define in the first place. Yes.
This amendment, do you see a scheme to oust KOTU from NSSF?
That has always been a scheme. And KOTU has always maintained that we accept amendments to laws, and indeed we actively participated, and through our able Secretary General, indeed he lobbied various non-governmental organizations, various stakeholders, to ensure that Kenyans, for the very first time in our independent history, to have the rights, labor rights in Article 41, in Chapter 4 in the Bill of Rights, to ensure that workers have a right to fair remuneration, workers to have a right to join trade unions of any kind and of their choice, or employers to participate and to join any employer organization of any kind, of any employer's choice, a right to collective bargaining agreement, and more importantly, a right to go on strike. Therefore, we should not be seen like we are opposed to amendments. We know laws are not static. Laws must always change. But we must ensure that whenever there is any proposal, any amendments, those amendments must and should be brought in good faith. And before such amendments are made, the law provides very clearly that there must be a sustained and active public participation. More importantly, when you want to introduce an amendment that is touching on the rights of workers, the Bill of Rights, not only workers, any amendment that touches on rights of Kenyan citizens must and should be done through thorough, consultative, and through public participation. Whenever an amendment is brought through miscellaneous amendment bill, it is like something you want to sneak in. There is so many amendments. It's not only amendment on NSSF Act. There is also amendment on Employment and Labor Relations Act that is talk about the essential services that before someone goes on strike, which is a constitutional right, you must talk the government must give you permission. You must ensure that so and so is remaining to provide services, while forgetting that that person that you want to remain, he has a right to go on strike and to question and to challenge. Therefore, we are not only opposing this as a PR exercise or as an academic exercise, or we are not engaging in a wild goose chase. This is something that we believe in, that the amendments have never been brought in good faith. For example, NSSF is a purely parasitical body. NSSF does not have any government allocation when budget is read. It means it is purely employers and workers' money. When you are saying that you want to introduce an amendment that the quorum shall be the 2/3 of general membership, it means what, for example, because employers and workers are always have International Labour Conference, March, June, and November. Then there is a serious discussion or a suggestion that is to be made when they are away. It means that decision shall be made without the input of workers, without the input of employers. It means because that position is not delegable. You cannot say that I'm a trustee in NSSF, but I'll be away, so and so go and talk on my behalf. Therefore, these people shall and have to be there for the quorum to be considered, and that is a properly considered meeting. And of course, that is why we are opposed to the amendment, because it is an amendment that if we don't look at it with our eyes wide open, if we don't remain very vigilant, because NSSF has been in the public odium, not for good reasons, but for every time money loss. Remember the Tasia 2 project? Remember during the period when the court representative Honorable Francis Atwoli and Jacqueline Moore was suspended the board, within 2 weeks, my brother, a decision has been made and workers had lost close to 10 billion Kenya shillings. Just imagine.
All right. Very quickly, because we need to wind up this interview, the Susion issue. The Teacher Service Commission already said that Susion, as well as the likes of Omboko Milemba, cannot continue serving in the unions of teachers, and that matter is already active in court. But then there's a push from teachers that Susion exits as Secretary General not.
I think that is something that whoever is pushing for it, the trade union leaders, even the Secretary General, even indeed Mr. Sri, is not a state officer. What the Constitution prohibits is holding 2 state or public offices. And that is mean that you hold 2 remunerative public positions, whereby you are paid from the exchequer, from the taxpayers' money. Trade union leadership, most of these general secretaries, it is even voluntary. People just volunteer.
But you know in that it is not voluntary.
And I'm telling you, it is not settled. It is not in the Constitution that if you are a trade union leader, you can never be in parliament. But the Article 97, let me remind you, demands that there must be a representative. Article 97 1C. It talks about a representative of workers in parliament. How would you be a worker and represent workers' position when you are not in parliament? So that the fact that Susion is in parliament is a good opportunity for even the teachers' fraternity to ensure that they have a representative. That is a constitutional provision. Kenyans say that whenever we are nominating, we must have a worker representative. And Susion is one of such workers. It is only that we always forget, my brother, that sometimes politics get into all these issues depending on your position. I don't want to accuse anyone who is doing that politics. But by law, the Constitution only prohibits holding 2 state or public offices or holding 2 concurrent remunerative positions. Trade union is free and independent. It is not part of government. It is not a parastatal. So you cannot confuse.
It's labor movement.
It is a labor movement. So you cannot confuse that when someone is in parliament and is also a general secretary of a union, then that one means that he is holding 2 remunerative positions and is a state officer.
Absolutely.
No, a big no.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, it's been a very fiery interview. I hope to engage you in future, obviously, because you have your fingers on these issues. But that's just why we put a cap on the interview, Mugo. Absolutely. It's time for us to take a tour to Cuba. Just hold there. And now Cuba healthcare system is rated among the best in the world, with its citizens accessing free medical care, including cancer treatment and organ transplant. So organized is the provision of healthcare that the country is recording 0 maternal deaths, with an obligation that doctors whose acts or omissions result in death step aside. Kenya sits to borrow the Cuban healthcare model, informing its engagement of 100 specialist doctors who will arrive in the country by the end of June. John Jacob Curia, me, returned from Cuba and draw spirals between Kenya's healthcare system and that of a Latin American communist state. Not much is known about Cuba, with its independence struggle spearheaded by the late Fidel Castro and its communist approach that is enshrined even in the constitution, the most pronounced feature. But the Latin American country, an island between the Pacific and the Gulf of Mexico, has one of the best healthcare systems, fully run by the government, effectively locking out private practice and the operations of private clinics. But why the success, one may ask? The system is designed with a hierarchical division, at the top being the Minister for Health and the lowest being the Family Doctors Division. The unique nature of a system is exemplified by the Policlinicos Division, which is the equivalent of a hospital providing services to people in an electoral ward in Kenya. During our visit to Cuba, we accompanied Health Cabinet Secretary Cecily Kariuki on a tour of the Vedado Polyclinic in the outskirts of Havana, Cuba's capital. It's a walk-in center whose sole mandate is to provide curative care, but with a bigger emphasis on promotion, prevention and rehabilitation. The polyclinics offer services such as mother and child programs, control of communicable and non-communicable diseases, genetic services, X-ray and minor surgeries. But it has the capacity to investigate medical emergencies such as a breakout and fully contain it, while proposing medical solutions for the same. Cholera outbreaks in Kenya continue to be a headache to medics, resulting into fatalities. And while cancer treatment is free in Cuba, the polyclinics have developed a cancer vaccine meant to rid the country of cancer completely. Well aware of the dangers that could predispose one to cancer, the Cuban government has made it mandatory for its citizens to visit a polyclinic once a month for a fully paid-up checkup. But as part of creating awareness and advocacy, the Cuban government, through the polyclinics, is insistent on physical fitness, which does not exempt the old. Road pavements are reserved for physical exercises, as well as some of the parks being dedicated to physical exercises to citizens as old as 90 years. In Kenya, for example, referral hospitals such as Kenyatta and Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital have to deal with the influx of walk-in patients who do not have referral letters, training capacity and delivery of services. But the influx can perhaps be explained by the lack of capacity and specialists in level 4 hospitals. Cuba, on the other hand, pumps 27% of their budget to healthcare, with an emphasis on capacity building at the polyclinics. So popular are the polyclinics and Cuba's healthcare system that 11% of their GDP is from medical tourism. The polyclinics are a training ground for medical professionals who earn degrees and postgraduate degrees from training at the polyclinicos. Doctors in Kenya spent the better part of 2017 on strike, demanding for a higher pay and the improvement of working conditions. In Cuba, a doctor earns $24 a month, the equivalent of 2,400 Kenya shillings, but with all other services including housing and education for family fully catered for by government. A Kenyan doctor at the entry level, at least from the CBA signed last year, earns a maximum of 81,000 exclusive of allowances.
It is not as complicated as perhaps it is made to look. It is something that is simple if we apply our effort to it, and if there is a political will which is already exhibited by the president, but also the leaders, the political leaders in Kenya.
We have just seen basic equipment, not any complicated machinery, and a dedicated workforce.
It is the work ethic. It is the doctors to look at their work as a calling more than a business.
Medication is free in the polyclinics and is also subsidized by government in the event you will buy it from a pharmacy. Meet Dr. Rodriguez Lau, the family doctor in Vedado. Her work from morning to 1 p.m. involves seeing patients coming for medical checkups. But from 1 to 5 p.m., her routine changes to making medical visits to families in Vedado. She tells us that residents in Vedado are placed under medical classifications, which include healthy appearance, risk groups, chronic non-communicable diseases, and chronic communicable diseases. The classification informs the doctor's planning of visits to patients.
Among our functions here is prevention with the patients. We also do healthcare or curation, rehabilitation, and we also do education and research.
The doctor is housed with the community for the sole purpose of accessibility in the event of medical emergencies. But before the scheduled visit by the doctor to your family, one is allowed to visit the doctor for a checkup. 65-year-olds and above must have a regular visit to the doctor for checkups to pick out any diseases or likely old age health complications. Men and women between the age of 24 to 64 must also do regular checkups for prostate and cervical cancers.
There is every conviction that we need to reorient our approach and to give more focus to preventive as opposed to curative approach, which is currently how our health sector is oriented.
Contracts for the 100 specialist doctors coming to Kenya end of June were signed last week by CS Sicily Karaoke, as well as a cooperation agreement between Kenya and Cuba, signed by CS Karaoke and her Cuban counterpart Roberto Morales Ojeda.
Between Kenya and Cuba and 100 doctors coming to Kenya, it's all systems go. It's an exciting day, and I want to appreciate my colleague Dr. Ojeda for signing on to release the doctors to now come to Kenya, and for opening the door for me to bring 50 Kenyan doctors to train here in Cuba. Deal done.
Y el internacionalismo.
This convention and the presence of a numerous delegation from Kenya will help us strengthen our healthcare system, and also to strengthen the healthcare system from Kenya. This is based on the principle of solidarity, which was a principle that was always defended by our Commander-in-Chief, our General Commander-in-Chief, Fidel Castro, the builder of our healthcare system. And when he spoke of Africa, he would always say that in cooperating with Africa, we are doing nothing but paying a debt that we have with humankind.
Amongst the doctors coming to Kenya are 9 specialists dealing with critical care, 9 orthopedic surgeons, 5 plastic surgeons, 5 nephrologists, 5 urologists, 3 neurosurgeons, 47 family physicians to be deployed to each county, 4 radiologists, 6 general surgeons, 2 oncologists, 2 dermatologists, and 3 general cardiologists, all from the Medical Education Corporation with Cuba. Homa Bay County does not have a single gynecologist, while the entire Rift Valley region has not a single neurosurgeon. The Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union are opposed to the specialist doctors coming to Kenya, arguing that there are unemployed medics in Kenya. The national government and the Council of Governors united in their resolve to bring in the doctors, while insisting that their engagement in Kenya that will last for 2 years will in no way mean that the government stops employing Kenyan medics.
We do not have sufficient specialized doctors across the country, but even where we have a skill set that is required to go to the far-flung areas, we also have cases human resource being asked to serve in the far-flung areas, but not willingly going to serve in those places. And so the specialized doctors who we are bringing today is really a drop in the ocean of what we may require. But as a starting point, we'll invest in it, but we'll invest in it with the aim of using them to train and capacity build and also mentor our own doctors.
I want this to be taken in a very, very sober way, because Cuban doctors are not coming to replace Kenyan doctors. We will always need Kenyan doctors. We will continue training the Kenyan doctors. We will continue strengthening our local capacity. We are not going to replace anybody. But we have to also accept our situation, number one, of the national doctor-patient ratio. We have also to appreciate the fact that certain counties lack specialties.
These are not ordinary doctors. These are specialists. We don't have them, and they are going to our level 4 and 6 hospitals.
In fact, Kenya is the only country within East Africa that was yet to sign a deal for medical cooperation with Cuba. Cuban doctors are spread out across 37 Latin American countries, 33 African countries, and in 24 Asian countries that include economic powerhouse Japan. We visited the Medical Cooperation Center to meet some of the doctors who have undergone the rigorous process of interviews and vetting by the Kenya Medical Board. A process activated immediately after President Uhuru Kenyatta's state visit to Cuba mid-March.
I am very happy. The possibility to go to practice medicine, to do all the medicine for the people. It's a one condition for all the doctors in Cuba, all the medicine. It's the history. It is my formation.
Okay. I think that Kenya is a very great opportunity to give to know the people, because I know that Kenya is a beautiful country.
With Cuba having successfully kicked out malaria in 1960, CS Kariuki signed another cooperation deal on the control of malaria vectors as Kenya seeks to up the war on malaria. Kenya's healthcare problems can only be described as having been compounded by two issues. One, human resource problems as well as attitude. Otherwise, with so little, Cuba has been able to maximize on its resources to ensure that its citizens are able to reap from affordable healthcare in this country. How about Kenya? John Jacob Kuria, Channel 1 News.
And now to the counties, where Kajiado County Commissioner David Kipkemei has issued a stern warning to all police officers who are alleged to be violating the law by allowing unscrupulous business people to engage in second-generation liquor business. This comes after public outcry over thriving illicit brew trade in major satellite towns in Kajiado County. This and more stories here now at the county briefs.
Despite numerous crackdowns by administrators, the war against illicit brew in Kajiado County seems hard to win, as some traders are said to be operating under the protection of senior police officers in the region. Kajiado County Commissioner David Kipkemei has now put on notice all police commanders said to be abetting the illegal business, saying those found culpable will face disciplinary action.
Officers wote tumekubaliana ya kwamba kila mtu ataenda kufanya kazi yake. Mambo ya kufungua mabaa kabla hajafika masaa, mambo ya kukuwa na mavilabu ambazo hazina licenses, hayo yote tumeishughulikia siku ya leo.
Elsewhere, Ruiru Member of Parliament Simon Kingara has raised concern over increased cases of land grabbing targeting public institutions. Speaking in Ruiru, Kiambu County, after issuing 26 million shillings in bursaries, Kingara says about 15% of all public institutions across the country have pending cases in court revolving around land grabbing.
Na nimepeleka mjadala bunge hasa kwa aina ya bill, nataka tuhalalishe tuseme kama eneo limetengwa kama la umma linapatiwa cheti mara moja.
Still in Kiambu, Kiambu Town Legislator Jude Jomo is drafting a bill seeking to have students in vocational colleges access loans from Higher Education Loans Board. Jomo says if passed by Parliament and enacted into law, the financial assistance will motivate more youths to seek higher education.
So hii sheria ambayo natunga saa hii itatusaidia kufundisha vijana wetu wawe mafundi
wa kujenga hii nchi yetu, kwa kujenga infrastructure yetu, kwa kujenga manyumba yetu na kwa kuwa katika industry yetu.
Meanwhile, hundreds of inmates and prison officers graduated with fundamental skills in information technology through an education program organized by Zitek University in partnership with the Kenya Prison Service. The initiative aims to equip learners with relevant computer training for the job market and entrepreneurial world in line with the ongoing prison reforms.
These particular programs ni muhimu sana kwa clients. Na ni muhimu kwa sababu ya kwamba clients wakitoka nje wakienda manyumbani kule kwa society unajitegemea au sio?
And Water Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui has pledged to support Murang'a County by initiating ambitious water projects across the county as a way to restore water supply in Nairobi and its environs. Chelugui was speaking in Murang'a, Kahuro area of Kiharu constituency during the burial of Pauline Nyambura Irongo, mother to Water Principal Secretary Joseph Irongo.
The programs that we have in the Ministry of Water is elaborate, and I believe Murang'a will be the first county to achieve universal water coverage in the next 3 years.
For Channel 1 News Hour, I'm Emily K. Badi.
Now, the Kenya Editors Guild is calling on President Uhuru Kenyatta not to sign into law the cybercrime bill recently passed by Parliament. The editors argue that the proposed law infringes on media freedom and goes against the principle of the Constitution, instead calling for the full implementation of the Access to Information Act that was signed into law 2 years ago. This comes as the Globe prepares to mark World Press Freedom Day on Thursday.
Barely a fortnight since a new team took leadership of the Kenya Editors Guild, their concerns are already on the table. The new leadership wants President Uhuru Kenyatta to rally the nation to uphold press freedom during the State of Nation address tomorrow.
The Guild hereby asks President Uhuru Kenyatta to demonstrate his commitment to the rule of law by ensuring the media are allowed to operate in an environment free of intimidation, threats, and attacks. And there is no better platform and forum for him to make a pitch for media freedom in this country than the State of the Nation address he is scheduled to give on Wednesday, May 2nd. 2 pieces of legislation offer immediate opportunity for the President. One is Access to Information Act that was enacted in 2016.
The Editors Guild calling on state and non-state actors to respect the profession of journalists and stop acts of intimidation and brutality as witnessed in the recent past.
Kuna wanahabari wengi ambao wanahofu sana kwamba wakifanya kazi yao huenda wakafuatwa na hujuma fulani hapa na hapa. Kwa hivyo taarifa hii hasa ni kuilenga serikali na vyombo vya usalama kwamba sisi kama waandishi wa habari tumejitolea kufanya kazi hii kulingana na mafunzo tuliyopata na kuhakikisha kwamba ukweli unapatikana.
The new leadership at the Guild has vowed to engage the state and other stakeholders on improving media freedom, calling on President Uhuru Kenyatta not to sign into law the cybercrime bill recently passed by Parliament. The editors argue the proposed law infringes all media freedoms, instead calling for full implementation of the Access to Information Act that was signed into law 2 years ago.
Secondly, the Computer and Cybercrimes Bill has just been passed by the National Assembly to match outcry by sections of society, especially on provisions on fake news, which on the face of it may be open to abuse.
We are moving to sit together, look at the bill comprehensively, go through it with the tenacity it deserves. We go through it so that when we are coming to present our memorandum, we go through it and identify the areas that affect the freedom of the media.
Kevin Washira, Channel 1 News.
Now the government has launched a relief food distribution drive in Mandera County following heavy rains that have rendered hundreds of families homeless. Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa says the government, in consultation with other government agencies and county governments, is committed to ensuring the safety of flood victims.
Tuesday afternoon, and Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa was in Mandera County to assess damage caused by the ongoing rains and humanitarian crisis unfolding.
Tumesikia kuna mafuriko Mandera, tumekuwa kule Elwak, kumekuwa na mafuriko kule. Tumeingia kule Takaba, kuna mafuriko kule.
Floods in Mandera have completely destroyed roads after River Dawa burst its banks following heavy rains that continue to pound the area. Wamalwa confirmed that Isiolo, Turkana, Tana River, Kilifi, Marsabit, Garissa and Wajir counties are the most affected by floods.
Tumejionea wenyewe ya kwamba mto Dawa huu umeweka maji mengi kwa mashamba ya watu. Wale walikuwa wamepanda mimea imeharibika. Na tunataka tuhakikishe ya kwamba tutaleta chakula cha kutosha ili wale wote walioathirika waweze kupata chakula.
Wamalwa also noting establishment of drainage and collection systems of storm water during the rainy season will address adverse effects of the perennial floods in the country. In Meru South District, 22 families in Gitogoto village have been rendered homeless after a landslide swept away their homes. They now say they are living in great fear because of cracks that have been reported within the area and are appealing for humanitarian assistance.
Siku ya Alhamisi usiku, saa 6 za usiku, ndio hii maporomoko ilianza, kasikia. Alafu kutoka nje nikakuta store yangu yote ilifunikwa, pia kitchen.
Nasikia hiyo sasa nyumba inaanza kutetemeka, hiyo nini unasikia kama hiyo nyumba itasink, itaingia ndani.
Elsewhere in Murang'a County, panic has gripped residents of Kiharu constituency days after a landslide claimed the lives of 4 and leaving 10 people injured. Residents claim the ground has developed cracks and houses have started sinking following the heavy rains that continues to pour. A few residents are being accommodated by neighbors, but majority are still living in the danger zone, claiming that they have nowhere to move to. Area leaders are calling on the national government to send geological experts to assess the situation.
And today we have come because of another crack that has been witnessed. There are so many other houses that are affected down there where we were. On the other side of the ridge, there was also other cases of mudslide. And what we would like to say is that people should take caution.
We urge the government to come quickly and give support to various people who are suffering here in this area of Kahatia to ensure these people are compensated, they are taken care of, and disaster management measures are put in place.
This is 85 families in Kiambu County risk losing their homes after they defied a directive by the government to vacate a wetland where they have illegally built their residences following a skewed resettlement plan. Local authorities are urging the families to relocate to safer areas, even as they pledged to fast-track the process of resettling bonafide individuals. Brenda Zadaradido, Channel 1 News.
Vote for KBC Channel 1 as your favorite TV station for the Kuza Broadcasting Awards 2018. SMS the word Kuza to 15601. It's absolutely free. Voting ends on 9th May. Vote, vote, vote.